There is a specific feeling walking back to your car after a long day, seeing that bright orange envelope tucked under your windshield wiper. It's frustrating. It ruins your afternoon. And usually you toss it in the glove box and tell yourself you'll deal with it later. Most drivers who live or work in New York City assume the Department of Finance operates on a strike system. The myth goes like this. If you rack up a specific number of unpaid tickets on your license plate, say 3 or 4, the city will eventually dispatch a crew to lock up your car. But if you look at this diagram comparing the myth to the actual administrative code, the reality is entirely different. The city does not care how many physical tickets you have. Enforcement relies on a single strict dollar amount, $350. More importantly, it's $350 in judgment debt. That means one severe violation, like a $400 camera ticket, can instantly overflow your limit the second it ages past the legal deadline. Counting tickets gives a false sense of security. If you track paper envelopes instead of the aging dollar value of your fines, your vehicle becomes eligible for a sudden, unexpected lockout the next time you park on a public street. Finding a boot on your car used to be an outlier reserved for chronic rule breakers. Today, the city's booting operation has evolved into a massive, daily revenue-generating machine. In 2023 alone, the city immobilized over 134,000 vehicles. The enforcement teams have your license plate on a digital list, and they actively scan for the threshold as they drive their routes. When they find you, they apply a heavy yellow immobilization device directly to your windshield. You cannot drive away. You cannot see out the glass. A common point of confusion is who exactly does this. A private contractor physically attaches the hardware to your car, but the legal authority and the fees attached to it come straight from the New York City Sheriff and Marshals. The enforcement system functions as a bureaucratic trap for any driver or business owner who fails to track the specific math and rigid timelines that push a ticket into judgment. To stay under the threshold, you have to understand that a parking ticket has 2 distinct lives at the Department of Finance. First, it is outstanding. Then it goes into judgment. This timeline illustrates exactly how that transition works. When a ticket is first written, it lands here in the green zone. It's outstanding. During this early window, its dollar value legally does not count toward your $350 boot limit. But the clock is running. If you don't pay it and you don't formally dispute it, the system defaults to escalation. Around day 30, late penalties are added to the total cost. Then, at roughly 100 days, the city automatically enters a default judgment against you. The ticket crosses into the red zone. The fine, plus all accumulated penalties, instantly pours into your $350 boot limit. You do have a tool to pause this clock. Formally requesting a hearing splits the timeline, shielding the ticket from default judgment while the judge reviews your case. Be careful, though. Looking up your plate and seeing the status "hearing held" only means the meeting happened. If the judge finds you guilty and you walk away without paying, that debt resumes its march straight into judgment. It's a simple trade-off. Ignoring the envelope saves your cash flow today, but it mathematically guarantees that the ticket will weaponize against you 3 months down the road. For a single individual, forgetting one ticket is a mistake. For commercial delivery operators managing dozens of vehicles, the $350 threshold is a structural nightmare. This entity diagram explains why. The city does not look at your fleet on a per-plate basis. They aggregate all judgment debt under the single corporate registrant holding the titles. That creates a multiplier effect. Let's say one driver gets a ticket in Brooklyn on Van A that eventually hits $200 in judgment. Another driver gets a $200 judgment on Van in Queens. Your corporate bucket now holds $400. You have breached the legal limit. Van C, which has a spotless record and 0 tickets to its name, is now entirely boot eligible. The next time it parks on a route, it can be locked down instantly. Fleets walk straight into this blind spot because of the mail. Judgment notices are physically mailed to the address of record, often a leasing partner or a remote forwarding office, creating weeks of delay before the actual fleet manager knows a ticket is aging out. Even if your dispatchers catch 95% of the violations, the residual 5% of tickets that fall through the cracks of a standard 25-van fleet average out to about $230 a month. 3 months of minor oversights will push your entire operation over the limit. Decentralized per-vehicle ticket tracking provides an illusion of safety. An isolated infraction in one borough can paralyze a perfectly clean vehicle miles away. By the time that yellow windshield boot is clamped onto your vehicle, the original cost of the ticket no longer matters. You have triggered an avalanche of administrative fees. Look at this cost breakdown. Before you even address the tickets you owe, the city demands two fixed release costs, a $185 boot fee and a $95 sheriff execution fee. Next, they apply a 5% poundage charge, calculated on top of your underlying fines, penalties, and interest. If your base debt is a typical $1,200, the final immediate cash cost to unlock your vehicle easily eclipses $1,540, and you have very little time to gather that cash. Once the boot is attached, the owner has exactly 2 business days to pay the balance in full before the city dispatches a tow truck to remove the vehicle entirely. If the tow truck arrives, the vehicle enters the impound pipeline. Daily storage fees accrue at the pound, and if the balance remains unpaid after 10 business days, the city has the authority to sell the vehicle at public auction. Avoiding a $115 ticket today is a mathematical error. It directly guarantees a compounding financial penalty of over $1,500 and risks the total loss of the asset just months later. If you are an individual resident managing a single car, the strategy to survive this rule requires only basic discipline. You need to enforce a strict 30-day internal rule. The moment you pull that orange envelope off your windshield, you have 1 month to either pay it in full or formally request a hearing. Acting within that 30-day window completely neutralizes the 100-day default judgment mechanism. It stops the penalties from growing, and it keeps your debt strictly out of the $350 limit. The trade-off is straightforward. You must sacrifice your time or your money on the front end. In return, you permanently erase the threat of a $1,500 surprise on your morning commute. If you are running a commercial fleet or acting as a delivery service partner, relying on your drivers to hand you paper tickets is mathematically impossible to sustain. Automate the data. This quadrant chart maps ticket volume and resolution speed. The top right danger zone is where high volume and slow tracking paralyze routes. Move into the green fleet optimization zone. Implement real-time database syncs to resolve tickets before the 100-day clock. Administratively, you must immediately update your DMV address of record to match your active dispatch office. Physical judgment notices cannot sit unopened on a leasing partner's desk. Finally, your dispatchers need a pre-deployment protocol. Before handing the keys to a driver, they must verify the entire registrant's judgment balance. If the entity is over $350, no vehicle hits the street until the debt is cleared. For business owners, the reality is clear. Investing upfront in aggregate fleet tracking is the only proven mathematical defense to prevent a few overlooked violations from